Good morning, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the Introduction to EyeSpy 2020, a video game version or vision screening and data management training. We're pleased to have you joining us today for this information webinar about EyeSpy 2020 vision screening program. My name is Katrina Frost, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. In an effort to reduce background noise, we ask that everyone ensure that they are muted. Today's webinar will be recorded, and we will be emailing a link to all of our participants. In addition, today's webinar will be posted on our website at visionquest2020.org under EyeSpy 2020 Training. As a reminder, we hold free live webinar trainings the first Monday of every month. Before we begin, we've been asking everyone to think of something invented about 150 years ago. Please take a moment and enter your responses into the chat box. So I'm just going to read a few of your responses, and Danielle Doyle said bifocals. And I remember seeing the first one up here too was Gina Crabtree said wheels, which was true. This is a good one. And we had some great answers, but the item that we were thinking of was the eye chart. The eye chart was used to measure visual acuity and was invented over 150 years ago. It was invented by Dutch ophthalmologist Herman Schellen in 1862. We have made tremendous technological advances since 1862. However, the eye chart is still in use today and is commonly used by schools across the United States to conduct vision screenings. We have better technology and can do much better for our children. This is why we're pleased that you're joining us today to learn about the state-of-the-art EyeSpy 2020 vision screening program. This is me, yay. So if you're new to attending our webinar, your chat box is located on the right-hand side. Here is the box where you can enter a question. We encourage you to participate. When you have a question, there's no need to wait until the end. Go ahead and enter your question into the chat box. I'll be monitoring questions throughout the webinar, and we'll do our best to ensure that your questions are answered. We will allow a lot of time at the end of the webinar for an interactive Q&A session. And some of you may be logging on from a web-based interface. Your screen may look like this one, and here is what you'll find. Here's where you'll find your chat box. We would really like to hear from you, and we would like to include your input in our webinar. So please ask your questions, share your comments at any time during the webinar, and we will be conducting a few polls. I always like to let everyone know that we're Vision Quest 2020. We conduct these trainings for EyeSpy 2020. Please stay connected with us by liking us on Facebook. You can also gain access to additional training materials. And for more information on EyeSpy 2020, look for us on Twitter at VQ2020. You can use the hashtag EyeSpy 2020 with no slash in the middle to tweet out questions and stay connected with others on webinars. You can also access training and informational videos on YouTube EyeSpy 2020. Vision Quest 2020 is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the early detection of vision disorders and preventable blindness in children. At this point, I would like to introduce our featured speaker, co-founder and CEO of Vision Quest 2020, and the software developer of the EyeSpy 2020 Vision Screening Program, Richard Arendy.
Well, thank you very much, Katrina. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, good. That's always a question that I have because I can't hear myself, fortunately. So thank you so much first of all, Katrina, for moderating the webinar, and of course to all of our attendees, thank you so much for taking valuable time out of your day to learn more about Vision Quest 2020 and more specifically EyeSpy 2020. And we're going to get into the details of EyeSpy 2020 with a live demo, which hopefully will spur lots of questions and interaction with you. So as Katrina mentioned, please do not hesitate to type questions into the chat box and let us know what your questions are. And again, we will have time at the end of the webinar to answer specific questions. So don't be shy. We love to hear what your thoughts are and obviously what your questions are. I am a professional geek by degree, and I had the good fortune of partnering with a pediatric ophthalmologist, a children's eye surgeon, back in 2001 to begin tackling the challenges of detecting vision disorders in children. So I got to take 20 plus years of high-tech development in the area of semiconductor engineering of all things and apply it to something that, as Katrina had mentioned, really hadn't been updated in well over 100 years. So it's really been a privilege to be doing this. As some of you may already know, EyeSpy 2020 is essentially, from the child's perspective, a very simple matching game, which you'll see in a few minutes. But it is much more than that from your perspective, because although it's a video game from the child's perspective, it's actually an entire data management system for schools when it comes to the collection, retention, and reporting of vision screening results. So this training today is for really anyone that's interested in EyeSpy 2020, but more specifically, it's intended for people that may be volunteering to perform vision screenings within a particular organization, more specifically a school. So for people that have never vision screened before, or perhaps they vision screened using more traditional methods, this webinar should help them understand how to use EyeSpy 2020. Of course, it's really for school nurses who are the first line of defense. You know, school nurses, we hold them in the highest of esteem because for many of these children that are in school, they're not regularly seen by pediatricians like they were prior to entering school. So school nurses have an arduous task in front of them, and parents and children alike are very reliant on school nurses. So our hats go off to all of the school nurses out there. And this system, EyeSpy 2020, quite honestly, has really been designed and built with school nurses in mind. Anything we can do to make their job easier, that is our mission, or a part of our mission. And of course, administrators as well. You know, we understand that there are decisions that need to be made for organizations at the administrative level, and perhaps EyeSpy has been brought to their attention and they want to learn more about that. So we'll talk about that as well. So before we begin jumping into the details, what I would like to do I'm sorry, I'm, you know, technology guy, but sometimes, okay, this is what I wanted to do. So I'm going to launch a poll, and if you could just let us know what your role is within your organization, within your school, and that would be helpful for us, just to give us an idea of who we're talking to out there. And again, if you've got specific questions related to your role, then we're going to be very interested in making sure that we address those. So hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to vote. And if there's any technical problems along the way, make sure you type those issues into the chat box. Since we've got everyone muted out, let us know via the chat box. So it looks like everyone is those people that we take our hats off to, quite honestly. It looks like we have school nurses or health assistants, the predominant. Looks like those are all the attendees. So welcome, and again, thank you for taking time. I know that you guys have children running into your office all the time, and that makes for quite the challenge to attend these things. So thank you for that. Okay, so, you know, because of our audience today, I don't have to go through a whole lot of detail here because, quite honestly, you guys are already the experts on this. I doubt that any of you are thinking, why do you need to vision screen? Some of you might be asking, why should we change how we've been doing vision screening? If we've been vision screening a certain way for, you know, the eye chart's been around over 150 years, why do we need to change that? So I'll go through a couple things, but again, quite honestly, I feel like perhaps I'm preaching a little bit to the choir, and I apologize for that in advance. But as I'm sure most of you are aware, up to 1 in 4 children have a vision problem. And the real challenge here is identifying the 1 in 4 children that does have a vision problem. Vision problems are not always obvious, as all of you already know. The Healthy People 2010 Progress Review was actually a heartbreaking publication from my perspective, quite personally, and that's because there's been absolutely no progress made at that point in time that it was published in the detection of vision disorders and therefore the reduction in preventable blindness in children under the age of 17. And that is astounding to me and really the impetus behind Dr. O'Neill and I's work. Again, as you're already aware, perhaps painfully aware, in order to use a traditional wall chart, in order to get or obtain an accurate vision screening, you have to really have acquired quite a bit of specialized knowledge and training, and you have to keep up on that training. Now, you're all trained professionals, so this might not necessarily be outside of your wheelhouse. All of you may already be familiar with the protocols or the rules in order to use a wall chart effectively. But you all may do things a little bit differently, and that lack of standardization creates perhaps challenges, and it also takes a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of your time. And even if you are using a wall chart, it doesn't you know, automatically generate reports or store that information for you. So when we're looking, when we were trying to develop a vision screening model, one of the things that we wanted to do was look at, you know, what have we been doing for the past 100 years? And it is the eye chart. The problem, as I'm sure you've all witnessed, is that children can peek through their fingers or memorize the wall chart. I've seen hundreds of children, and I don't know how they do it, but they're able to memorize a wall chart within just a few seconds, and it's amazing to me. As we already talked about, it requires an extensive amount of training and relies heavily on human interpretation, which is problematic because there's no standardization in that. The few trained individuals that really know how to perform traditional vision screenings have to travel to where the students are. So unless you're able to vision screen all the children within your school, you have to bring in trained volunteers in order to assist with that. It's extraordinarily expensive. The act of vision screening is expensive. And missing children that have vision problems is extraordinarily expensive to the health and education of that child. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I apologize. And of course, the data collection and reporting is very labor intensive. You guys have enough on your plates, and so Dr. O'Neill and I really wanted to address and develop a system that met all of these challenges and actually goes above and beyond that. So as you'll see, EyeSpy 2020 is extraordinarily accurate, it's reliable, it's very accessible because it's essentially a software product that you download. We've tried to make this incredibly affordable, and the outcomes are extraordinarily measurable. So for example, EyeSpy 2020 has already been used to vision screen nearly 500,000 children since its release in 2010. So I want to take just a quick moment to make sure if there's any questions, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask them at this point. And again, we'll be doing this throughout the webinar, so don't feel obliged. You might not have questions yet, but if you do, I just wanted to make aware of that. And I see that Rhonda is informing us that we have a group of school nurses and an IT person in our audience. I want to say hi to the IT person because I feel like to a certain degree we're kindred spirits. That IT person probably knows a whole lot more about IT than I ever will, but because they're in the technology arena, there's a kindred feeling that I feel for those technology people since I'm one of them. So welcome and thank you for attending. So we've already talked a little bit about the vision thing. So, you know, the 1 in 4 children that has a vision disorder, it's very important to identify these children. And the reason why is because there are numerous studies that suggest that 80% of learning occurs visually. Some people will argue that it's higher, some people will argue that it's lower. This is not to imply that children that are visually impaired cannot learn. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that unless we know that a child has either low vision or some other vision disability, we can't accommodate appropriately. So it's really, really important from an academic perspective, and again, preaching to the choir here. But, you know, vision also impacts children in ways beyond academic performance. And so I'll try and step off the soapbox, but suffice it to say that I'm sure all of you are aware of just how critically important vision health is. It's very interesting and upsetting at the same time. There's data that suggests that low-income children and children that are experiencing problems in school are disproportionately affected by vision problems. Now, some of this is commonsensical. If you're having performance issues academically, the very first thing that we need to be looking for is whether or not that child can see. But the fact that low-income children are disproportionately affected, we're not entirely sure why that is from an epidemiologic standpoint, but the data does suggest that that is the case. So, again, trying to not get too much into the weeds here, but correctable vision issues are often misdiagnosed as either a learning disability or an attention-related disorder, sometimes even dyslexia, and that really frustrates me. Being a kid is hard enough, going through school is hard enough, and children often don't know that their world is not supposed to be blurry. Their frame of reference is a blurry world. So it's really not up to the children to tell us that they can't see. It's quite honestly, it's our responsibility to determine whether or not they can. So I've got another poll I want to pop up, and I'm not sure. Let me see. I think the poll is going to ask you what time zone you're located in. The other option, if you don't want to participate in the poll from that perspective, we would love to know what state you're in. So in your chat box, you can either participate in the poll, or in your chat box, you can just let us know what state of the union you're joining us from. and that's always interesting just to see where we've got. Okay, so nice, Arizona, Iowa, great. So it's good to see. Oh, and Gina joined us. I know that she had someone in her office, so it's nice to see that Gina was able to join us. Okay, great. Thank you for that, by the way, for everyone responding. Well, again, welcome, and we're glad that we've got a lot of attendees here from our home state of Arizona. Arizona is one of 7 states, unfortunately, that does not have vision screening laws for school children. So that's a little bit frustrating. I live here in Arizona. My daughter, who's now almost 26 years old, went through her education process here in Arizona, and we are working feverishly to change the landscape, the legislative landscape here in Arizona, to try and protect children's vision. For those of you not in Arizona, if your state doesn't require that, then we would be more than happy to support efforts in your state to try and change that as well. So, okay. So before we jump into EyeSpy 2020, I want to give you some insight as to why we developed the technology the way that we did. Many of you are probably aware of instrument-based vision screenings that have been recently introduced into the market. Now, these devices are extraordinarily expensive, but they're very good at what they do. But they're not intended to evaluate visual acuity. They cannot tell you whether or not a child can see. What photo screeners in the upper right-hand corner, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Again, being a little bit challenged here. But, so let me see if this works. Oh, my apologies. Hang with me. Okay, so this device right here is a binocular autorefractor. These devices are collectively referred to as photo screeners, but I want to point out that really above age 3, these devices are not appropriate to be used. They can be used as an alternative to the traditional eye chart in children up to age 5. But what these devices do is they take measurements of the eye, and then they evaluate for risk factors. It's not telling you whether or not the child can see. It's basically saying the eye has the correct shape, and that is not evaluating the entire visual system of the child. It's only looking at their eyes. So in very young children, I know that the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Academy of Pediatric Ophthalmology and Strabismus, they say that this can be performed in children as young as 6 months of age, but typically what we recommend is from 18 months on, unless we're aware of congenital defects with the child's vision. So for the children that you're providing invaluable service for, like I said earlier, first line of defense, school-age children, visual acuity screening is preferred. They make that very clear. The question is, why is that? The reason why visual acuity, even knowing it's a huge task to assess the visual acuity in a child using a wall chart, right? You've got that complicated protocol, you've got to record the data, you've got to report the results to the parents. There's all these encumbrances, and yet it is still the preferred method. And now why is visual acuity the preferred method? Because visual acuity lets you know whether or not the child can see. So it's much more than just evaluating the shape of the child's eyes or whether or not they're aligned. It's letting you know whether or not the vision system holistically is functioning properly. So I'm going to show you a quick video, I think. Let's see. So this is a child. He's sitting 10 feet away from the laptop computer, and as you can see, he's just playing a really simple matching game. Now I'm going to get into a whole lot of detail here about what's going on. So I won't. Don't worry about what you're seeing on the screen so much, as the point is that there's animation and cartoon animation, which is used to engage the child in a way that a traditional vision screening does not. So again, I'm going to give you a live demo of the vision screening process and get into a whole lot of detail there. But before I do that, I think that if I were sitting in your shoes, I would want to know one thing, and that is, again, from my perspective, I'm responsible for these children. I want to do as good a job as possible. I want to know that this system works. Well, that was the question that we asked ourselves. So we spent 7 years developing the technology, and then we sent it off for independent scientific validation at the Medical University of South Carolina's Storm Eye Institute, which is one of the top ophthalmic clinics in the entire world. And they were given EyeSpy. And we asked them not to use trained professionals when performing vision screenings. We wanted them to use, for lack of a better term, lay personnel, untrained personnel, not someone as qualified as a school nurse, not someone as qualified as an IT professional that's comfortable with software, but literally just personnel that have with no exposure to either one. And so they went out and recruited Boy Scouts, which was not exactly what we had expected, but we were excited by the challenge that they had put EyeSpy 2020 through. And their conclusion was that EyeSpy screening results using a patch, which is what we use to occlude the children's eyes, were not significantly different than those of a professional examination. Now, here's what is important to understand. EyeSpy 2020 is not a diagnostic tool. So when we talk about comparison to a professional examination, we're not talking about the detection of strabismus or amblyopia or myopia or a specific eye condition. What we're talking about is the detection, the identification of those children that require professional medical follow-up by an eye care professional. So this is really groundbreaking as far as a technology that can be readily employed by any school system. You don't need extensive training on the system. You can engage volunteers, and you, as the people responsible for these children, can feel comfortable with the accuracy of the vision screening that's taking place. So what supplies do you need other than the software? Well, the child does sit 10 feet away from the laptop computer when vision screenings are being performed, so we provide you extension cables. We also test stereo, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, so we provide those glasses. Occluding glasses, if you don't want to use disposable eye patches, we provide occluding glasses. And the problem with, just to let you know, the reason why we recommend the occluding glasses is that they're not a consumable item. One of the things that Dr. O'Neill and I wanted to do was develop a system where there was not ongoing costs associated with your adaptation of the program. So we want you to adopt the program, we want you to use it, but we don't want it to be this thing that costs you a ton of money each and every year. So in addition to the occluding glasses, we also provide you a soft cloth eye patch that is used for children that are either apprehensive about putting on the occluding glasses or are wearing corrective lenses themselves, and so you obviously couldn't put these glasses, you know, you could, some people try to, but you know, rather than put these glasses over their existing glasses, we provide a permanent cloth patch, not a permanent, but a non-disposable cloth patch. I'll talk more about the stereo card in just a second, except to say that we provide these additional materials to you as well. Later response panel is used for when you're vision screening children that cannot play the game themselves, and so you're actually playing the game on behalf of the child, and the child is indicating to you their choice, their selection, by using their hand or their finger to point to the shape that they see on the screen. So this is more for special needs children. This stereo card is used to confirm whether or not a child has depth perception. So during the game, which you'll see, the game process is fully automated, but it will adjust itself in real time, and it will prompt you in real time if it needs you, the proctor, to confirm certain things. And so this stereo card is provided. And again, this is like a kit, and one kit is provided for every laptop that you're going to install EyeSpy 2020 on. So let me this, okay. So the setup is fairly simple, and we provide all the documentation that you need in order to do this effectively. One of the advantages to EyeSpy is, here's a setup with EyeSpy 2020, and you can see, there's two kids, they're sitting, I don't know, 3 feet apart maybe, and one proctor is administering both examinations or both screenings. And one of the things I want to point out is that although the background looks the same, that's purely coincidental. Both games, EyeSpy 2020 is completely randomized. So no two games are exactly alike. And also of important note is that the optotypes at the top of the screen, and I don't know if you can see what I'm circling here, but this young lady over here is older than this young man over here. So they're being shown different optotypes, which is automatically computed by EyeSpy 2020. So there's nothing that you have to do except enter the child's name, birth date, and press go, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. But the reason why it's important that everything is randomized is because these two children can be screened essentially simultaneously and not quote unquote cheat off of one another. And because it's a video game, he has no interest in helping her or vice versa. They are engaged in the gaming process themselves, which is obviously one of the advantages and one of the reasons for putting it in a video game motif is to engage these children. So here's more detail where you can see in this particular instance, they've got 4 laptops set up side by side, 2 people proctoring. They've got the children that are under evaluation, obviously playing EyeSpy 2020, and then behind them is the next group of students. And the reason why, and this is not necessarily the scale, but the reason why this group of students is important is we always recommend that you start with older children first, because the video game is more intuitive, I would say, for them, and then have younger children waiting to play the game. These children will observe what the older children are doing, and you won't have to provide any instruction to the children with regards to how to play EyeSpy 2020. In fact, most kids don't need instruction anyway. They know what to do. I'm not going to go through a lot of detail on this, except this is the quick start guide. I'm going to show you where you can download this from our website, but it tells you exactly what to do, from placing the computers, how to adjust the screen, where to position the children, spacing between the children, exactly what you need at each station. So it goes through all of that detail for you. So again, I'm going to take a breather before we jump into the live demo and make sure that there's no questions at this point. And I know, Katrina, I've mentioned this to you. You interrupt me at any point in time if there are questions or Anything going on? Okay.
I was just going to take a minute to remind everybody to go ahead. If you guys have any questions, make sure you type them into the chat box, and we can address them. Don't feel like you have to wait till the very end, because these are the times that we can address any questions that you have right now, or we can always wait till the end as well. But go ahead and feel free to ask your questions into the chat box, and we can always answer them right now.
Thank you, Katrina. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to jump right into the live demo. And this is EyeSpy 2020, and I want to talk about 3 things regarding EyeSpy 2020. I want to show you how to do a vision screening. I want to show you how to select a student from a list, because in order to do a vision screening, there's some data entry involved. So I want to show you, 1, how to do the data entry. Then, ironically, I want to show you how to avoid the data entry. And then lastly, I'm going to show you the reporting features. So I'm going to go through this kind of quick, but in the upper left-hand side of the screen, you'll see where it says proctor name. So I'm just going to put in my last name. Now, if your school has student IDs and you wish to use a student ID, then you can certainly just go ahead and type that in. If you do not want that student ID to be optional, but you want to require the proctor to type that in, then you would just check this box down here, if you can see where I'm moving my mouse, where it says require student ID. If I require student ID, then this field must be filled in. Okay, so we're going to, that's a good last name, very common, Smithsonville. There we go. Now, for birthday, and one thing I should point out is when I'm typing in the name, it's auto-capitalizing for me, so I'm not pressing Shift. I'm just pressing the letter A. It makes it a capital for me, just to try and save time. I'm going to type in the birth date. I'm not going to type in any slashes. I'm going to let the computer, again, EyeSpy, do that for me. So this particular child was let's say, born April. See, and it puts the slash in. So I put the 04, it put in the slash. He was born, let's say, April 9th of 2009. So I'm going to put 09 for 2009, and now I'm going to say that I want to test color vision. You have the option of selecting ethnicity, and that's used for that particular demographic information is used for epidemiologic studies. We never garner personally identifiable information at the all of the data analysis that we do is at the aggregate level. But you may wish to have this information for your internal purposes. So you can provide an answer for that if you want. This child's in 1st grade. Now, I want to point out, if I inadvertently misclick, let's say that I say the child's in 3rd grade. If you notice down here, it says click to verify or fix the date of birth and or grade. Now, this child may legitimately be in the 3rd grade, but I have to click this button and basically say, are you sure that that's correct? Because the computer knows this child being, the ripe old age of 6. Well, I wish I could go back to those years, but anyway, this child should be in the 1st grade. So it knows to a certain degree and will try and flag you. Teacher's name is Smith, no relation to Smith and Bill. This is male, and I'm going to say he's wearing glasses for right now, just because I want to point out that if the child is wearing glasses or contacts, that is you want the child to wear his or her corrective lenses at the time of performing the vision screening. So that's the data entry process right there, and then you just hit begin screening, okay? And what I want to point out is that even if you've never performed a vision screening using EyeSpy 2020 before, you don't have to worry about it, because it's going to tell you exactly what to do. So the first thing obviously, is to make sure that the student is wearing his clean corrective lenses with no eye patch or colored glasses at this time. So it's going to tell you exactly what to do. Again, remembering, if you follow the quick start guide, the child's now sitting 10 feet away from the computer. I'm going to mute my sound because, one, I don't know if you can even hear it, but there is sound available in the game. So if you're screening one student at a time and you want the sound to be on, that's your prerogative. I'm going to mute the sound. So the first thing that the child does is they select the character just by moving the mouse left or right. They select the character that they want to be. And although there's a strange likeness, this really isn't me, but I'm going to click that kid. And now they're going to play that particular character through the game. So you'll see that same character being used throughout the game. So if you notice, the opto types displayed on the screen were automatically selected, again, based on the child's age. And the first thing that EyeSpy is going to do is it's going to verify the child's comprehension of the game. In other words, does the child understand that what he or she is supposed to do is line up where the shapes match and click the button? And again, you're going to find that most children do. You'll occasionally have a very shy child where you just have to let them know, hey, it's okay, you're not going to break anything. Go ahead and press a button when you line them up. So we're verifying right now the child's comprehension. Now, if there was a lack of demonstrated comprehension, in other words, a child did not make the correct selection, then a different message would pop up on the screen that would ask you to re-instruct the child on how to play the game, and then it would automatically rescreen the child. So we're going to give them a second opportunity now to understand what the game is. There are children with gross visual deficits that will not be able to demonstrate comprehension because they simply can't see the shapes even knowing they're that big. Okay, so it is possible, and then a report would be generated for you explaining that. So the next thing that we do is we place a patch over the student's left eye under his corrective lenses, so it's telling you exactly what to do with the patch. And now you're going to press enter when ready. Okay, so now the game continues, and if you notice, and I'm going to go through this quickly because I don't want to bore you guys, but if you notice the opto type at the bottom of the screen, it gets smaller automatically. So it is going through a very specific protocol in order to identify the child's threshold visual acuity. So it keeps getting smaller, keeping in mind that the child is sitting 10 feet away from the computer. Now, if they get the answer wrong, then you'll notice that they don't get the animation sequence. So there's no negative reinforcement. It's not like something bad happens. They just don't get to go and advance through the next, they don't get to see the cartoon animation. So there's only positive reinforcement, but there is no negative reinforcement. So we've now assessed the vision in the child's left eye. I'm sorry, in the child's right eye. So now we're going to move the patch from the left eye to the right eye, and we're now going to test, in this case, his vision in his left eye. So again, using the same exact motif, and if I weren't talking so much, you could see that the game is actually, it plays very quickly. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. The game is constantly measuring the child's results, how long it's taking them to make the selections. So it's not just a simple situation, are they getting the answer right, are they getting it wrong? It's following a very specific, scientifically validated and medically validated protocol that I don't have to be aware of as a proctor. So I don't need any training except to be able to read the instructions presented to me on the screen. So now it's asking me to remove that patch and ensure the child is wearing his corrective lenses. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to press enter, and now the child is presented with the same matching concept. So once the child understands that it's a matching game, it's a matching game. Well, obviously, as you can tell, and hopefully you can see this on the screen, Katrina, you're going to have to tell me if it's not coming through, but this is testing for mild to severe color vision or color blindness. And depending on the resolution of your screen and brightness and all of that stuff, you guys might not be able to see the shapes, or if you're colorblind, you won't be able to see the shapes. But this is extraordinarily accurate at identifying children with mild to severe color deficiency. And it's, again, using the same matching concept. So the next part of the test, you guys won't be able to participate in, and I apologize about that, unless you happen serendipitously to have a pair of red-blue specialized glasses from EyeSpy laying around, which you probably don't. This test is going to test, so let me back up. We now know, EyeSpy now knows the child can see clearly out of both eyes at the necessary levels in order to perform at that age. So if at any point the EyeSpy detects that the child has a vision problem, it will stop the test. It will only continue the test if it knows that the child has met the criteria in order to continue to the next level. And the reason why I mention this is because one of the things that we're also very sensitive to is that we don't want the process to take longer than is needed. So as soon as we know that the child needs to be seen by an eye doctor, we stop the test. The very last part of EyeSpy 2020 is to test the entire vision system of the child. And what we're displaying here are random dot stereograms that, not to get overly technical, but they are assessing whether or not the child has 300 arc seconds of separation, stereo separation. And that's a extraordinarily valuable piece of information, because by looking for depth perception, now that we know that the child can see clearly, now what we're doing is we are making sure that the eyes are aligned, that there's no eye suppression issues, no neurological issues, and no cognitive processing issues. This is the major differentiator between EyeSpy 2020 and those $8,000 cameras that take a picture of the child's eyes and try to measure for risk factors. EyeSpy 2020 is essentially looking now into the child's brain, figuratively of course, to determine whether or not the vision center of the brain is processing the data properly. So this is a big deal, especially because it's doing so very quickly and in a fully automated fashion. Once the vision screening is complete, a report automatically pops up. You can either print the report at that time, or obviously you don't have to. If you want to see the report in Spanish, all you have to do is press the S key. And hopefully you can see that on your screen. There's the report in Spanish. If you want to type in English, you press E. I'm going to press the space bar to screen the next student. Again, that is as easy as it is to vision screen a child. It took a long time because your humble host can't not talk a lot, but that is, it typically takes 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, but it's a very fast process. Now I want to show you how to vision screen a child without having to type in all of their information. So I'm going to press this button up here called Select Student from List. And what you'll notice is I have all of these children already in my list. So all I have to do is say, oh, here's John Jackson. Okay? You can tell these are fake names, not a whole lot of creativity going on there with me, but I'm going to select this child. And by the way, if I want to only look at, let's say, John, see, when I start to type in search criteria in here, it filters the list down. So I know that I want John, and I think it's J.A. There we go. So now it's filtered the list down to only those names that start with J-O on the first name and J-A on the last name. And I can put in more criteria here. So let's say I put in teacher Smith. Well, now there's no preloaded students, so it tells me that my search criteria is too restrictive. So I'm just going to clear the search. Okay, so let's pick John Jackson. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to double click and see now all of his information has been entered. All I have to do is say whether or not I want to test color vision, because by the way, you only test color vision once during a child's life. So you might have a protocol that says, okay, every first grader, we're going to test their color vision. So that's why it's not automatically selected. Do I want to test color vision? And then, of course, whether or not he or she is wearing their corrective lenses. And it's important if, to talk to the child. Oh, I see you're not wearing glasses. Did you leave them at home? Did they forget them? Are they lost or broken? Again, your protocol within your school might be to say, if a child's forgotten their glasses, we're not going to vision screen them. But many schools do vision screen regardless, because they do mass vision screening days where they're screening their entire student body in just a couple of days or less. And so they're going to vision screen children whether or not they're prepared with their corrective lenses, but at least that will show up on the report. So again, rather than have to type all that in, you just select the student from the list and make a couple of selections here as to whether or not they're wearing glasses, whether or not you want to test color, and begin screening. So that is how you vision screen. Now I want to show you, and I know this is a drink out of a fire hose, but I want to show you where the real power of EyeSpy 2020 is, because being able to accurately vision screen your children with confidence is extraordinarily important. But what we also want to do is provide you a tool that saves you a lot of time. So it can save you time on the vision screening side of things, because now you can vision screen children. One laptop can vision screen 10 kids an hour very easily. It's actually likely that you'll do more than 10 children an hour, but let's just say 10 kids an hour per laptop. So if you set up 4 laptops, you've got 40 kids an hour, and we've got many schools that have a pot of laptops where they're actually vision screening using 8 or 10 laptops at one time. But anyway, so the vision screening process is expedited, and it's also a very thorough vision screening. But the data collection side of EyeSpy is very powerful, because all of your vision screenings are safely secured and encrypted in a HIPAA-compliant data repository that is provided to you free of charge. So now your IT department, which IT departments tend to like this, because now they don't have to worry about safeguarding and backing up this sensitive data. It's all taken care of for you. So if you want to look, let's say you started doing vision screenings in July, you would press July or August, September, whenever you started doing vision screenings. And by the way, you could filter this criteria however you're most comfortable doing. When I press September, I just want to point out that because we're not at the beginning of September yet, see, we're only at August 28th. So it knows that when you say September, you're looking at September of last year. If today were September 3rd and I click that button, this would be for the year 2015. So it intelligently knows, or by the way, just to let you know, you can also type in the date range that you want manually. So I'll put in June 1st, 06/01/15. Okay, so I'm going to say show most recent screenings, because if I rescreen a child, if I say show all screenings, then there might be children that I've screened multiple times, which is okay. That's a completely acceptable thing to do, but then you're going to see each and every screening for that child, and that might not be a desirable outcome, because the most recent screening is theoretically, hopefully, the correct screening. In other words, you're not rescreening children because they passed. You're rescreening children potentially because they failed. And so if you're going to rescreen that child, if they failed a second time, that's the result. If they passed on the rescreening, then that's the result. That's the theory anyway. So since we've got Katrina here, let's see how she did. So I'm not sure that this is a real vision screening or not. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up, these are all fake vision screenings, and what I want to do is I want to pull up a failed vision screening because I want to show you what the report looks like when a child fails. So when a child fails, it's going to tell you exactly where the failure point was. What did they fail on? Okay, so this child failed on depth perception. And this section also appears on the report, which is for iProfessional use only. Again, trying to save the school's time. This is something that the parents were encouraging the parents to take this report to the eye doctor. Let the eye doctor fill this form out and bring it back to the school, because if the school nurse wants to know, hey, listen, was this an accurate assessment? If I put glasses on the child when the child is wearing glasses, can they see properly? Were they prescribed glasses? Is there something that could potentially interfere with school performance? This doesn't encumber the school in any way. It provides them tremendous insight from the professional eye examination, which you guys deserve to know. This data is not held, quote-unquote, hostage by EyeSpy 2020. So you can print summary reports. Like, I'll show you what the summary report looks like, just so that you can see that. I'll show you that in just a second. So if I print the summary report, I'm just going to click Flash. Okay. And the other thing that I want to show you is exporting records. And us IT people love this stuff because, by the way, I've got this particular installation of EyeSpy configured for some of my experimentation. So some of the stuff may not look entirely correct, and I apologize in advance for that. This is exactly what the summary report will look like when you generate the summary report that I just did. So it's going to tell you what was your date range right here. It's going to tell you how many records are shown, what page, the name of your school, when the report was created. So these reports are very helpful. The reason why the report's helpful is because as the school nurse or maybe your assistant is involved in this, you might want to say, look, I need to report to the third grade teacher. That's a bad example. Let's do pre-K. No, okay. Hold on. Kindergarten. I don't have enough data in here. Bear with me. What I want to do is I want to show you what happens if I put in kindergarten. So here's an example. I've got a total of 6 students here, and what I want to do is I want to provide a report of all the children that failed in kindergarten. So I unclick the pass box, and now I've got a report of exactly what I'm looking for. I can then print a summary report, and I end up with this, which is basically a roster of all the children for a particular grade. You can filter. You can filter and sort this database however you want. Date range, all of the columns are sortable and datable. So it's your prerogative. And what is powerful, in my opinion, is that at any point in time, you can export this data into Excel. And so, again, my apologies because I'm not sure, constantly doing experimentation. But this is
Rick,
what
I'm sorry. I also wanted to point out, Rhonda had a really good question. She's asking, can we, Sorry, she's asking another question. Sorry, Rhonda. She said, do we need to print the vision screening results for each student as they complete it, or can she go in later and print off? Can she go in later and print them off later? So could you address that question just really quick while you're in that?
Wow, that's such. Thank you, Katrina, for calling my attention to the question, and Rhonda, that is such a good question because that is one of the more powerful features. So, for example, right now, if I wanted to print all of these reports, I would simply press print all vision screening, all 90 vision reports. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to filter just like we did before. Oh boy, okay, so here's 4 reports, right? I'm going to print all 4 of these reports. I'm going to generate a PDF. And I want to show you exactly what that looks like because that's such a good question. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes. You can print the reports subsequent, and here are, let me show you this way. Here are all 4 reports that would have been output, they would have come out of your printer. So those are the 4 failures for kindergarten that you wanted to print. So yes, in answer to your question, you can filter this list however you want, and then you can export your records, you can print all of them individually, or you could just print a summary report. So again, if I print a summary report.
I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you again. She also has a really good question. Can we import students' demographics into PowerSchool? If you're familiar with the PowerSchool system, and I'm not sure that we're doing anything like that quite yet, but that was a question that she raised. Can we import student demographic info from PowerSchool into this system? Yeah, right. That's first of all, I really appreciate the question, and what I'm going to do is, Katrina, when we send out the email after this webinar, I want to include the link that addresses that very specific question. The answer is yes. You can import all of your student information. If you click in EyeSpy, let me just say this. If you click Select Student from List, you're not going to have any students in your list because there's no preloaded students. The question is, how do you get them in there? Okay, one way is to add each student individually. Well, that's not really going to save anyone that much time. So the other method is to click this button that says how to import student info. When you click that button, you're going to get a whole big thing of instructions that I recommend printing, okay? And it tells you exactly how to import your data. Now let me just say this. I put together a video, and I can't imagine any of you wanting to hear my voice for another 20 minutes, but this is a 20-minute video that goes step by step by step exactly how to import your student roster so that you don't have to type it in, and that's a wonderful question. So yes, the answer is yes, and there's a video that all of you will be getting a link to the video, and actually we will also be putting it up on our website because that is probably one of the more common questions, particularly because I'm not demonstrating it during our webinar, because it does really take time to go through the process. But the answer is yes. And the IT gurus out there are the ones that are typically involved in the process because it is, you'll see when you open up the document why that is. It's not meant to be that's not an inflammatory comment. It's just that you need certain access and privileges in order to accomplish that goal, and typically that is relegated, to the domain of the IT department. So, okay, I don't want to run out of time for more questions. So, Katrina, are there more questions you want me to address right now? No, those were the questions, but I wanted to make sure we addressed them while you were right there. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Nope, that's great. So, that was the live demo. Thank you all for tolerating that. We obviously had some questions, and we will get to more questions in just a second. We went through the report section and we went through it very quickly. You saw how you have bilingual individual reports and really the advantages, and I guess this is really what I wanted to point out, is that we've got, only you have access to your database, your part of the data repository that we provide. And any computer that has EyeSpy, you know, installed on it, even if you didn't do the vision screenings on this computer, let's say you've got computers out in the quote field that are doing vision screenings, and this is the nurse's computer in the health office, right? So this computer has actually never been used to do a vision screening, but it's sitting in the health office with EyeSpy on it, and now you have access to all of that data, the individual reports, the summary reports, exporting it to Microsoft Excel, and you can actually export your data to other secure databases as well. But again, that is a more complicated topic for, I don't want to say for another day, but the truth of the matter is every school handles this differently. So, but it is possible to do that. I'm getting close to wrapping it up so that you guys have plenty of time to ask more questions. If you go to EyeSpy2020.com, which actually I want to show you what it looks like. So EyeSpy2020.com, let's see, how do I do this? You'd think I'd be more fluent. Let's see if I can pull it up. So EyeSpy2020.com will take you to this specific page within VisionQuest2020.com. And if you scroll down the page, there's a brief description, and then there's a section called Materials. And Materials is where you can click on any of these items and download them and print them. They're for your use. This parent information handout is actually exceedingly useful if you're looking to provide parents information about vision. This is where you took your where you would take your pre-implementation survey. This is where you download EyeSpy. You have to be given an activation code. There's all these things that are obviously required. And then if you wanted to look at previous training webinars, then that's where you can come and find this. And this is where we're going to be posting that video that I talked about. You'll be getting a link to it. But I just wanted to point out that this is the website where you can find this information. You can look at some things about us in the news and all of that stuff. So you're more than welcome to access that resource. So user's manual, parent information, surveys prior to implementing EyeSpy 2020, registering for training. All of that's available to you there. So I already talked about the fact that you have access to the web-based stuff, but you can email us. I'm going to give you email addresses that so that you have access to us through email. You can attend as many of these webinars as you can tolerate. We're more than happy to talk to customers on the phone, particularly at the district level when you're implementing at the district level, but we're more than happy to chat with you on the phone. So we want to make sure that the program is exceedingly successful for you. And, all I can say is that this is, it really is an honor and a privilege, to be involved in the organization. And to be speaking with you today, and on behalf, I guess, of all the thousands of children that you each serve each and every year. I'm not exactly sure how you guys do it, but on behalf of them and of course the children that we are, we've dedicated really our lives to saving their vision. I just want to thank you, because I know that you guys have a very full plates, and so to listen to me ramble for an hour takes tremendous sacrifice on all of your parts. I want to make sure that you have access to our amazing education and outreach coordinator, Katrina Frost. Her email address is shown on the screen at cfrost@visionquest2020.org. If you're gluttons for punishment and want to get in touch with me, then you're always more than welcome to do that at Randy. And I love getting emails. You know, I said that tongue in cheek. So when I say glutton for punishment, what I mean is that my responses to you are equally as robust as my ability to talk during these webinars. So, but feel free to reach out to me directly as well. You can download the materials that I showed you at EyeSpy2020.com. And as Katrina mentioned at the onset of the webinar, we're going to be sending out an email with a link to this recording or today's webinar, and also just a reminder to please stay connected to us. And with that, I want to address perhaps any questions or talk about whatever Katrina wants me to talk about, or you want me to talk about before we wrap up.
Rhonda has a question, and she's asking, can the results be imported to a state vision screening certificate?
Well, that's a great question. And what I am going to apologize in advance for is that I am not entirely sure if I know what that means. So if we could get clarification on exactly what that is, then, you know, I tend to put on my technical hat sometimes a little bit prematurely. The answer is that we can accommodate exporting data into any format that for which we are provided a specification. So, you know, all of that data is readily accessible. We can accommodate, again, so long as we know the specification, we can generate a file to meet their needs. As far as what that specific question is asking, okay, so in Iowa,
can you see the comments?
Yes. Okay. So in Iowa, our state requires that a certificate for vision screening is done on all K and third graders. So can the results be imported to a state vision screening certificate? Okay, so let me make sure I understand this, because I'm not sure if the certificates are pre-printed pieces of paper on which you wish to print the student's information, or if it is a certificate that you're generating from whole cloth, or if the certificate is something that is electronic in nature. So
yes,
let me, okay, so she said yes they are. So this is a let me make sure I'm clarifying. This is a pre-printed piece of paper onto which you're printing. So this is actually the first time that we've received this specific request, which is I'm very impressed that Iowa actually has this in place. This is very interesting. So here's what would happen. We would need to know what that certificate looks like, so that ultimately what we could do is reformat our report, or a version of our report, so that it would accommodate the formatting of that vision screening certificate. So it is technically possible. It's not something that exists currently, but again, from a technical perspective, as I'm sure our IT person would agree with, almost anything is possible. So yes, Rhonda, if you're willing to email me a copy of the certificate, that is absolutely very, very helpful. And then I can look at it and we can start to better understand. And I will likely have more questions for you, but if you want to send me a blank copy, and so long as it's obvious, you know, what goes where, then that's great. If there's specific information that would not be obvious to me, then perhaps you could send me also a fake completed vision screening certificate, so that I have an idea of exactly what what the end product is supposed to look like. So thank you for the question. Thank you for emailing me, and we will subsequently be in touch. And I'm very excited to hear that Iowa has that system in place. And so we definitely want to make sure our goal is national implementation of EyeSpy 2020. And so if there are states that have specific requirements of which we're unaware, we are highly motivated to comply with those requirements. So having said that, I'm appreciative of the information.
Were there any more questions from anyone that we could address about today's webinar? Okay, well, thank you, Rich. That's all the time that we have for today's webinar training. We're pleased that you guys could attend. Please look up for our following email with the link of recorded today's training session. On behalf of Richard, Vision Quest 2020, and myself, thank you for joining us today and taking the time to learn more about EyeSpy, and we hope that you guys have a great day today. Thanks again.